Greetings people. Today I'm going to use up the last of my blackberries. What I picked a good week ago. So since I picked them, I've made 20 jars of blackberry jam. Blackberry and plum jam. The first 10 were 50-50 of blackberry and plum, the second 10 were 60-40. Which worked really well. So if you find this too much plum in your blackberry and plum jam, just knock it back a little bit. Not too much though, or you'll lose the body. But yeah, 60-40 came out really well. So I've still got more left. Didn't have any more plums, so I got some rhubarb out of my garden and did about 50-50 of rhubarb and blackberry, maybe a bit less than 50-50, bit less maybe. So rhubarb and blackberry, I stewed them up and I put in a fair bit of sugar. Not as much as you make for jam, but you need a fair bit of sugar, especially with rhubarb you need quite a lot of sugar because it's so sour. It's very, very sour, so you need quite a lot of sugar. But anyway, you can decide how much sugar you want. So I just add it until I think it tastes about right. So in my case, yeah, it's very sweet. I don't know, probably added at least a cup of sugar. Is that right? I'm not even sure if that's right. But anyway, I just added it till it was about right. Alright, so I did stew it up and it's been in the fridge for a few days. So I'm just bringing it back up to simmer, and I'll let it simmer for a while, try and evaporate some more of the water. So what I'm going to make is a tart, blackberry and rhubarb tart. And I'm going to do a lattice work on the top, I hope, if the pastry lets me. That's the plan. I've made this before plenty of times. The trick with making the filling is you don't want it too runny. You don't really want it runny at all. It wants to be as firm as you can make it. Probably what I should do is put in some corn flour, but I haven't got any. So what I normally do is just evaporate it until it's quite. Well, it's never going to be firm, but firm enough so that it won't run. I don't want it running. And then when you cut it, you want to be able to cut the tart, and you want to be able to pull a slice out, and it should not run all over the place. It shouldn't run, it should stay as a slice of tart. That's the idea. That's the goal. Let's see how we go. So, I'm going to start by getting 1.5 cups of flour. That's a cup. Cup and a half. No worries. And we want about, this is a biscuit pastry, not a short crust pastry, so I want about 1/2 cup of sugar. I've talked about biscuit pastry before. I've made biscuit pastry recipe before. I can't remember what I was doing, but I have talked about it. So the difference between biscuit pastry and short crust is the biscuit pastry will be not so short and sweeter. It'll be sweeter and harder and crisper is the idea. I don't really know why they call it biscuit pastry, because if you turn them into biscuits, they're no good. Of course, there's the American idea of what constitutes a biscuit, which is very different to what Australians and English people think a biscuit is. So if you're American and you don't know, a biscuit in Australia and the UK is a cookie. Not. And what you call a biscuit, we call a scone. Anyway, so a pinch of salt and just a level teaspoon of baking powder, even less can be good. Mix it in, dry ingredients, mix them in, no worries. And as I always say, the critical thing when you come to make pastry, the critical thing is the temperature of the butter. So always use your butter from the fridge, and that way it'll always be the same temperature. Especially if it's a hot day like today, you don't want to use room temperature butter on a day like today. That'd be a bad idea. Now I'm just going to put it in the microwave for 20 seconds. Hopefully I won't knock this camera over. Let's try this. 20 seconds. Whoops. Can't see what I'm doing. Can't see what I'm doing. 20 seconds, and it should be the right temperature for the pastry. It's dangerous today because it's so hot. Like I'm sweating just here in the kitchen. It's hot, so a very strong chance that the pastry will be too hot. Alright. I need a knife. Ordinary butter knife. Alright. Now all I want is 95 grams. I think I've talked about this before, but it's the problem. The original recipe, my original recipe for biscuit pastry, which is out of Cookery the Australian way, the Bible. The problem was it makes too much. So what we need to do, what I need to do, is to reduce the quantities, which I did. But when you reduce the quantities, oops, it's too much. Okay. When you reduce the quantities, there's the danger that you'll get it wrong. Or, no, that's not right. It's the danger is that things just won't fit. Like, you know, it calls for an egg, and you can't really reduce the egg, you know. I mean, it's one egg or it's nothing, you know. When was the last time you saw a recipe calling for half an egg? I mean, I'm sure there probably is one, but not normally done. Just whip that up. I'm going to put an egg yolk in a minute. You know, I think this is supposed to be a rubbing in recipe. Supposed to be, I think it's supposed to rub it in, so maybe I'll just do that. I don't think it's going to work too well in the stand mixer, even though I've done it before in the stand mixer. I don't know, depends how much liquid you put in. Like, I'm not going to put a lot of liquid in. I'm going to put in just an egg yolk, and I'll just use a bit of milk just to make sure it makes the dough. But just to get it started, I mean, you've got lumps of fat in the butter. You've got the lumps of fat just floating around inside the flour, and the K-beater and the stand mixer it won't integrate them. It won't crush them. They just go around with the flour and nothing much happens. So that's why you need to rub it in sometimes. Anyway, in the old days, a lot of stuff used to be done by rubbing the butter into the flour. Scone dough, for example. Hey, I haven't made scones here yet. There's another thing to make. I've got some plans coming up for future recipes, so I should definitely do scones. Right, I'm going to hopefully get this right. I'm going to crack the yolk into there and I'm going to keep the white. Hopefully I get it run the right way, not the wrong way like I usually do. Because I'm not perfect and I make mistakes. Like everyone does. I make mistakes sometimes, and my father said, the man who never made a mistake never made anything. I think that's a good story. I don't know if it's true, but it's a good story. Alright, let's go. So it's possible it might just work like this because I rub the butter in, but it's also possible it won't. And I don't really think it's going to, so I'm just going to put a little bit of milk. Small amount. And see what happens. Now that doesn't work. Add a little bit more. And that surely is going to work. Sure. So the trick with pastry is getting the right consistency. It's all to do with temperature. You don't want too much liquid. You want just enough liquid to do it. Just. Yeah, I think it's just going to form. So, back in the fridge. Coming together. The inevitable rolling pin. Right. Let's have a feel of it. Have a look, let's have a feel. Yeah, it feels about right. Pretty close to perfect, I would say. That's what we want. So we'll cut about 2/3 for the base and 1/3 for the top. The top, like I said, the top will be lattice work. There's always a bit of fun. It's always a bit of fun making lattice, and it's kind of a bit more forgiving than making a contiguous flat top. Right, let's flour the board a bit. Flour the bench and flour the wheel. Right, flour the wheel. Roll it out. Good fun rolling out pastry. If you've never done it, it's good fun. If you have done it and you've failed, don't give up, try and do it again. It's all about getting the temperature right of the butter. Get the temperature right, it should just work. Actually, this is a little bit too dry maybe. Is that big enough? That's about big enough. Right. So then we try and pick it up. We hope we can pick it up in one hit, otherwise we're in trouble. Pull it over the pie dish. Oh dear. Yeah, making pies in the summer, it's, you know, when the weather's warm, it's not good for the pastry. Makes it hard to get the pastry right, and in fact, even though I had the pastry just perfect, it is just tearing away here a little bit. I mean, it's not really bad or anything, it'll be okay, but you do have to be careful. And yeah, summer's just not ideal for pies. Because the pastry very quickly becomes too warm. Like it happens just when you're sweating like today, like, I don't know, it must be more than 30 degrees outside. Yeah, when you're sweating, pastry very quickly gets weak, doesn't hold its strength. Anyway, alright, we're gonna get there. It's gonna work. We're gonna just get over the line, just barely. Just barely get over the line, but a miss is as good as a mile. Now I'm just going to check how my mixture's going. Just making sure it's not burning. I'll give you a look at that shortly. But first I'm just going to recombine the trimmings with the piece for the top. Make sure we've got enough. Alright, so to make lattice work, I'll show you what we do. So instead of making a wheel, what we want lattice work is a lot of long pieces, long strips. Tagliatelle is what we want. So just flour that. Flour that and roll it out. And some of the pieces need to be as long as the pie dish is wide. That's about that. And then just roll it. They don't all have to be that long, but some of them do. So just roll it out. I don't know. Pastry recipes are a bit of a black art. And you know, this is supposed to be made with 2 cups of flour, and when you muck around with it, reduce the quantities, like I was saying, it just doesn't perform. You don't get the same reliable result you get with the original recipe. But you know, I just got sick of having too much pastry because it makes too much. Alright, so we just cut these strips, I don't know, about 1.5 centimetres wide, I suppose, one, or maybe only 1 centimetre wide is probably better. 1 centimetre strips. Wide tagliatelle. So if you don't know Italian, tagliare means to cut. So tagliatelle is what you get by cutting pasta. You cut pasta sheet, you get tagliatelle because you cut it. So same thing here, this is really pastry tagliatelle. There we go. Like I say, this is it's forgiving because you only need to pick up a strip at a time. You don't have to pick up an entire thing. You notice when I picked up the entire thing, that's when I got into trouble. If your pastry's not exactly right, when you go to pick up the entire thing, it just falls apart and you go, oh, I can't do it. Like I say, you've got to get everything right. Pastry, it's easy if you get it right. So it's got to be the right recipe, it's got to be the right temperature butter, and it's really got to be the right temperature today, you know. Doing it in a hot kitchen is not the best. Right, so I'm going to let that blackberry and rhubarb stew a bit more, reduce a bit more of the water out of it, and I'll be back. Okay, the rhubarb and blackberry is thickening up nicely, so I'll just show you what that looks like. Oh, hang on. Forgot to press the button. Alright, here we go. And you could see in the past there was kind of like a layer of less viscous stuff on the top. But that's pretty much gone, pretty much evaporated away now. And so we've got this quite thick mixture, which is the filling. You know, really simple filling, just rhubarb, blackberry and sugar and nothing else. Nothing else. I'm just going to give the pastry a bit of egg wash, which is almost entirely white, just to attempt to seal it. Like I said before, you don't want your pastry going soggy when you put the filling in. You don't want the pastry going soggy. If the filling's really liquidy and it soaks into the pastry too much, it'll just ruin the pastry. I mean, I'm sure we've all had soggy pastry at some point and it's not good. Not good. Don't like. So we'll just try to avoid that by sealing it with some egg white. And I think what I'm going to do, I'll just turn this off and I'll give it a chance to cool down a bit. As it cools, it'll firm up a bit. I don't want it all the way cold. I mean, I'm assuming when it's cold it won't run at all. So I don't want it all the way cold, but I think I'll just let it come down in temperature a bit so that it's not so likely to soak into the pastry. So I'll probably give it, I don't know, I'll probably put it in the fridge for maybe half an hour and that should cool it down a fair bit. Alright, I'll be back when I've done that. Alright, now the filling is well, it's still liquidy and it's still steaming, but it's nowhere near as It's still quite warm. Anyway, I'm not waiting any longer, I'm just going to pour it in. So in we go. Now you don't want to overfill your pie dish. So I've actually still got a fair bit left there, but I'm just going to leave it. You don't want to overfill your pie dish because then it'll run out and it'll end up on the floor of the oven, which we don't want. So let's assemble the lattice. So start with a long one and just stretch it across the middle. Then we take the next long one and go across the other way. And we take the next long one and we go across next to the first one. Take the next long one, go across next to the second one. Take the next long one, hopefully it doesn't break up on you. Go the other way. Next one. Go that way. I hope I'm not going to run out, or maybe I am going to run out. Maybe I am going to run out. Oh well. Oh no, maybe I think I'll be alright. Damn, this is falling apart. Well, that's what can happen when you're not quick enough. All the time I spent waiting around for the stuff to cool may have backfired on me somewhat. Anyway, let's just pretend that that didn't fall apart. Pretend. This is the longest one we've got. It's probably going to break apart because it's so thin. Come across here. Oh yeah, that's right. And this one is quite fat. And we just need to cobble something together for this. Not the greatest success I've ever had with pastry, but you know, when it's all baked in the oven, it'll still look fine and it'll taste great, so don't worry too much. We're not going for Michelin stars here. What we are going for is a decent result, quote unquote. A decent result is what we want. As long as it's reasonable, that will do. And trim off the excess. So, pat it down at the edges. Try to hopefully make it all stay together. That should be right. I've made plenty of these. I've made plenty of them. Some of them work really well and others struggle a bit. This will be in the category of the ones that struggle a little bit. It hasn't been too bad. I've had some real disasters. This is not what you call a disaster. Certainly wouldn't call it a disaster. It'll be fine. It'll be totally fine. Do not worry. Just get that covered. Just gives a bit of extra colour, this egg wash, and we put it in the oven. So I've got a temperature of about 180, maybe 185. It's a funny thing, the fan forced ovens. I've talked about it before. When I used to bake pastry at 220 in a non-fan forced oven. But not anymore. So what's the pastry like? tastes good, very sweet. Sweet, not as buttery as the normal short crust. But yeah, don't go eating pastry, you just get fat. So throw it out. Even though it tastes alright, tastes good, but I'll throw it out. Alright, I'm going to bake that for, I don't know, however long it takes, half an hour. Probably about half an hour, 40 minutes, and I'll be back. Okay, I gave it about, oh, no more than half an hour. I think I gave it exactly half an hour. It's a funny thing, I tend to err on the side of overcooking, because one thing I hate is pastry that's not cooked. It might look great, but if it's soft and not uncooked, that's bad, so I tend to go a bit over. Because I don't, especially down the bottom, I don't want the base to be undercooked. And yeah, I still don't really trust fan forced ovens. But anyway, half an hour, here it is. Let's have a look. So we've got the nice lattice work there. I'll come around the other side, you might get better white balance on the other side. Yeah, it's still not quite the right white balance, but anyway, there it is. So you can see the lattice work comes up a treat, looks great. You know, it doesn't all have to be woven. I mean, you can't really. The only way you can weave it properly, completely, is if you've got really strong pastry that will not fall apart, and then you can weave it, and and then separately, and then put it over the top. No, it's not really feasible and not worth the trouble, because you can just do this, and you get the woven part, the middle's woven, and sure, the outsides are not woven, but it doesn't matter, because you still get the visual effect of the lattice work, woven lattice, even if it's not fully woven. And it's easy to do. Anyway, it smells fantastic. I'm not going to eat it now because I'm taking it to a friend's house, and it's, these things are best if they're not cut when you present them. So what I'll do is I'll do that, and when I actually come to eat it, I'll video it then, the eating phase, and we can see whether the filling stays solid or whether it runs. It's not going to run much. If it runs at all, it won't be much. Anyway, there it is, blackberry and rhubarb tart. Okay, it's been a few days since I made this pie, and I took it to a friend's place, and we enjoyed the pie. It was good. So let's have a look at it, and then I'll eat it on camera. So video on. I'll just come around this side. Give you a good close look at how the crust is. You can see the evenness of the pastry. So as you can see, the pastry worked very well in the end, even though it looked a bit dodgy. Looked a bit dodgy at the time, but actually very good. So we just cut ourselves a slice. Holds together fairly well. There was a little bit of moisture came out, just a little bit, but not a huge amount. It worked quite well. I think perhaps if I'd had some corn flour, I would have put it in, but it's fine. It's totally fine. I mean, it cuts really cleanly. Now, a little bit of cream is always nice on something like this. A little bit of cream, not too much. Right, let's have a look at the in the bowl. Look at that. In the bowl. Maybe we'll come around this side where the light might be better. And look at how smoothly that cut. Alright, enough pictures, let's eat it. Blackberry and rhubarb tart. It's everything you want from a fruit tart, especially blackberry and rhubarb. It's sweet, but there's still a little bit of that sourness of the rhubarb comes through. Not a huge amount, but just enough to make you know you're eating rhubarb. Biscuit pastry, totally doing the job. It's not as buttery as the short crust, so which is appropriate in this case. So you just get the nice firm, reasonably firm pastry. It's a little bit buttery, but not really buttery. But the firmness is good because it holds together. And of course, you know, the blackberry. The Blackberry, which is ultimately what it's all about. That distinctive taste of the blackberry. Little tiny crunchy seeds, you know. Really something. Really good. Sweet, a bit of sourness from the rhubarb. You've got the smoothness of the pastry and the sweetness of the sugar, because I did put a fair bit of sugar in this. And the blackberry, the flavour of the blackberry, fantastic. You know, this is what you want. If you like tarts. Really good. Tastes like what it's supposed to be. There's no filler, there's no chemicals, there's no enhancers. It's just pastry, blackberries, rhubarb and sugar. That's it. And cream. And it tastes like it. It tastes exactly like what it is. So, yeah. A success. Nice job. And the lattice work looks great. Right. So, see you next week.